So I recently got a Canon EOS R. It's my first camera in about 8 years. Up until this point I've been using the 5D2, which I love. I think it's a great camera. But I was kind of wanting a bit more from my camera. I wanted better accuracy in the autofocus, a bit better low light performance, and some better high sort of dynamic range. I wanted to take this opportunity before I sold the 5D2 to talk about the differences between the EOS R and the 5D2. I'm going to kind of split this into two parts. First is going to talk about my initial impressions on the ergonomics in comparison to the 5D2, and then the second part is going to be about the performance. This is a 5D2, and holding this, after just holding my EOS R, you can really feel like this is a bulky camera by comparison. I like the 5D2's ergonomics because of several things. You have this wheel here and this wheel here for changing settings. So changing settings on the fly using these two wheels is just so easy, so quick. It feels like a solid bit of kit. This camera, when you first pick it up, you think this is a professional quality camera. The top screen is a big deal. So if you've got your camera on your tripod, you can look down and change your settings there. You don't have to look through the viewfinder, which is where the settings normally live, or the back screen by turning the info on, like this. The battery life. When this camera is not shooting, literally the only thing that is using battery is this top screen here, showing you your settings. And after a while, even that sort of goes in standby. I can look through the viewfinder, I can frame the scene, and it won't be using any battery. Obviously it will use a little bit of battery when it meters and when it autofocuses, and if you have sort of image stabilization, then the battery will be used for that as well. But predominantly this camera is a beast when it comes to battery life. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. I do shoot a lot of video on it, so it eats away at the battery, but when I'm just shooting stills, this camera could go for days on a single battery. Even more so with a battery grip. And then lastly, the most important thing that I love about this camera is the viewfinder. So this is a mirrored viewfinder, and when you look through, it bounces light off the mirror and then through the lens. So what you're seeing is essentially what's coming through the lens. To compare that with a mirrorless camera, when you look through the viewfinder, you are getting the light coming through, landing on the sensor, and then being duplicated in the viewfinder. I do want a proper viewfinder. Problem is, a proper viewfinder adds to the bulk because the mirror inside the camera, let's get right close. So the mirror in the camera is what adds to the bulk. If you get rid of that mirror, you can make the camera significantly thinner. I am really sad to get rid of the 5D2. This is a ridiculously good camera. Even today, 12 years after it was released, the images I can get from it are still just ridiculous. The quality, the clarity, the color, the sharpness, the dynamic range, all really, really good. Ergonomically speaking, using this camera for the past 8 years has been an absolute pleasure. I almost feel like I'm saying goodbye to a loved one, because I am going to be going through grief selling this camera, because it's just been a workhorse. It's never failed me. The images have always been stunning. If you are in the market for a camera, a full frame camera, you don't have the funds for, the 5D3, the 5D4, some of the, Sony and Canon mirrorless. You want something full frame, you don't mind the bulk. The 5D2 is still a ridiculously good camera. So it is with a heavy heart that I say goodbye to the 5D2 and hello to the EOS R. So let's talk about the EOS R. I haven't written anything for this. I'm kind of just going to go on the fly, talk about it as it came into my head. It's really weird. The 5D2, having used it for 8 years, and then the 5D and the 40D, they're really big. They fit in your hand well, but they are big. They're heavy, which is fine if you're like a wedding photographer or someone who needs their camera to be working very well, easy to use, and the weight is less of a concern than the durability, I suppose. Going from the 5D2 to the EOS R, basically this camera feels very small, everything feels very crowded, but it feels very well made. Again, the body is it feels like a composite. The hand grip fits quite well. In fact, I would argue it fits better than the 5D2 somehow. There are a lot of buttons, there's no dial, you change the mode using that mode button here, and then you have the wheels. So on the 5D2 you had the wheel on the top like this, and then you had the wheel on the back like that. That's now here. You don't have a joystick, you don't really need it, you can autofocus pressing the screen, which is amazing. You have this touch bar here. The only thing I've found that it actually is used for is changing ISO, and it works fine. I don't know what else it's used for yet. I don't know if I'm going to use it that much. I think I prefer an ISO button and an actual dial, but that's probably just because I'm used to the 5D2. You've got the AF on button, which is good. The shutter button feels shuttery. It doesn't have like a click like the 5D2. Like if I press the 5D2 one, it's like half press, click. This one, it's just kind of a soft, spongy. They have a dedicated on dial here, which I feel like is a bit of a waste of space. You could have had various other things here, and you could have had like a smaller switch for on and off. I don't know why they've dedicated this basically in this entire area to the on and off switch. Menu's fine. One of the things that was quite challenging when I'm filming with the 5D2 is often I'm filming myself and often I'm looking in the camera like I am now. I don't know what it looks like. This, however, is really cool. You can also use it, so if you're shooting low, you can look down at the screen. If you're shooting high, you can look up. If you've got an odd angle, for example, your tripod is on like in the water and you can't get behind to look in the viewfinder or on the screen, having it be able to articulate like this is actually really useful. There have been a number of times when I've had to sort of contort myself into some odd shape just to look through the viewfinder to make sure I'm composing correctly. So I think this is going to be something that I use a lot more than I initially thought I would. The only problem is when it's got the L bracket on like this, you can't twist the screen because it gets bumped by the L bracket, which is a bit of a pain, and I'm reluctant to spend another God knows how much on an L bracket. But we'll see how much of an issue that is. It's funny because on the 5D2 there's a lot of buttons, and I'm looking around for the buttons that I'm used to pressing that don't exist anymore because everything is on the screen. I think this will be something that takes a while to get used to as well, because normally if I want to, zoom into the frame, I click the zoom button on the camera. If I want to select a different focal point, I press the focal point button on the top. If I want to change ISO, drive mode, like I know where everything is on the 5D2, but now when I want to change that stuff, I have to look at the screen, and then I have to find it. Is it this? Yeah, like I have to go and click. Where is it? That's autofocus. I don't want that. Is this it? Yeah. Okay. So you have to press the button for it, which is, again, I guess I'll get used to it. Like, it's just something you have to get used to. Electronic viewfinder. I've heard lots of people say, you can see like the actual exposure, what it's actually going to look like when you're looking through the viewfinder, but I don't look through the viewfinder to see what the exposure is going to look like. I look through the viewfinder to compose the shot. It's going to sound really lame, but you look through the viewfinder and you kind of lose yourself in the shot. Your existence is now looking through the viewfinder. That's all you see. You are the shot. That sounds well hippie and spiritual, doesn't it? With an electronic viewfinder, you don't have that separation. You don't have that becoming the scene and looking at the scene, because you're so aware that you're always looking at a screen. That I can't explain it. It's a very like a visceral experience when you're looking through a viewfinder as opposed to an electronic viewfinder. I will get used to it, I'm sure, because I'm not going to be returning this. I'm not going to be keeping the 5D2. Like, I have to get used to it. What I want from a camera ultimately, I want the camera to be the channel to getting the photograph. Okay, I don't want it to be an obstacle or a barrier in any way. I don't want to have to mess about with dials and switches and buttons and settings and all of these other things. I don't want to have to do that, because every minute you spend faffing about with settings is a minute that you're not getting the shot. The EOS R it feels like it's quite a bit more advanced in what it can do, but that comes with complexity as well. It's not a complaint, it's just an observation. Ultimately, this is just the first impressions. I haven't even gone and taken a proper photograph of this yet, so we might see that it's a bit different in the field. We're going to move on to the sensor measurements. I'm going to throw some charts up on the screen from dxomark.com, a great website doing sensor comparisons, so check them out. As you can see, the 5D Mark II performs slightly better at lower ISOs, but then it's outperformed from about 6400 ISO onwards, and then of course we reach the limit there. So DxOMark do something called a signal to noise ratio. I don't really know what this means, but the EOS R looks better. I'm going to move on from this because I have no idea what I'm looking at. Now we get to the good stuff, the dynamic range. So at about ISO 100 to 400, we have about 12 stops of dynamic range, and that sort of cascades off down as you increase the ISO. But the EOS R, you can see, has 13.5 stops. It cascades in a similar way to the 5D, but it doesn't drop off more so past the certain sort of higher ISOs. It continues down in a fairly stable way. So this clearly shows that it's got better dynamic range throughout the ISO measurements. Again, better tonal range and better color sensitivity. So that you can really see that this is the 5D force sensor basically inside a mirrorless body. Thanks for watching. I will put a link to the next video when it's up down below in the comments. If you'd like to see that, make sure you hit subscribe. It'll probably be up in a week or so. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about the EOS R or the 5D2, I'd be happy to answer them. And that's it. Have a nice day. Thanks.